Now I'm going to stop it here. And so can you tell the jurors then, when you crossed the road and went to this vehicle, obviously the video shows you approaching the passenger side, correct?
Correct.
And why did you approach the passenger side?
Well, I didn't want to stand on the driver's seat side because that's where George was, but there's also oncoming traffic that I wouldn't be able to see, so I chose to go around.
Okay. Why didn't you want to go to the side where Mr. Floyd was?
Because of the oncoming traffic in the
So
street.
it wasn't about Mr. Floyd, it was the traffic.
Yes.
All right. And so we see you then here sort of behind your coworker. Tell us about then, did you have a conversation with the occupants of the car?
Sort of. I notified them that they needed to come back into the store and that the bill was fake and that my boss wanted to talk to them. To George, actually. Sorry, not to both of them, just to George.
And so when you approached the car from the passenger side, did you see how many people were in the car?
3.
And where were the 3 people in the car?
George was in the driver's seat. His friend was in the passenger seat, and there was a woman in the back seat in the middle, or possibly on the right back behind the passenger.
And so had you seen any of those individuals before that day?
No.
Had you seen them in the store earlier?
Just the male.
Okay. And when you had this conversation at the vehicle, who were you talking to?
The person that George was with.
So the guy in the the front
Correct.
passenger? And did you make any observations at that time of Mr. Floyd?
Correct.
What did you see regarding Mr. Floyd?
He just seemed like he didn't want this to happen. Like he was just kind of like, oh, like why is this happening? Sort of a thing.
Okay. Did he seem awake?
Yes.
And did he talk to you at all?
Not really. He just kind of shook his head.
And the passenger in the front passenger seat, did he talk to you at all?
Correct.
And I want you to tell us what he said, but the end result, did they agree to come into the store?
No.
When you were there at the vehicle, who did you do most of the talking to?
The person in the passenger seat.
And did you think that you were talking loud enough for the other people in the vehicle to hear you?
Correct.
And so then after that conversation, what did you do after that?
I went back inside with my coworker.
And when you got back inside the store, what did you do?
I told my manager that he did not want to come into the store.
And did you get some further direction then from your manager?
Correct.
And what was that?
Go back outside again and tell him to come inside the store so we can talk to him.
All right, so try it again, in other words.
Correct.
And then for that second trip, did you go with some different, some other coworkers?
Correct.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is start Exhibit 31 up again, and we'll watch that process, okay? Saw you go out on the first trip with another individual, another employee,
Correct.
and he did not come back into the store, did he?
No, he left.
Okay. And so when you were told by the manager to go out a second time, did you take some other coworkers with you?
Correct.
Whose idea was that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, so let's run Exhibit 31 again, please. So let's pause the video right here if we could, please. And for the record, now we're back outside again, correct?
Correct.
And the record should reflect that we paused at 20:21:43. So we see that two other individuals coming out before you, correct? And there's appears to be a woman in a black jacket, correct?
Correct.
And is she a coworker, or was she at the time?
Correct.
Had she worked there longer than you?
Correct.
And the other individual has a white T-shirt on. Had he worked there longer than you?
Correct.
And is he actually related to the owners of the store?
Correct.
And so they were out ahead of you at this point, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you had to sort of jog to keep up with them, didn't you?
Correct.
And all right, so let's run 31 then. Now let's pause here just for a moment, please. The record should reflect we're at 20:22:15 as the timestamp when we paused it. The individual in the white T-shirt initially went up to the driver's side, correct?
Correct.
And we see you standing here behind the SUV, correct?
Correct.
And eventually the individual in the white T-shirt went around to the passenger side door, which was open.
Correct.
And were you able to hear the conversation that the guy in the white T-shirt was having with the occupants of the vehicle?
At this point in time, I was not able to hear.
So then let's run the video some more, please. All right, now we see, if we can pause here, please. This is 20:22:21. You walked up to the passenger side of the SUV, correct?
Correct.
So at this point, were you able to hear the conversations that the individual in the white T-shirt was having with the occupants?
Correct.
And were you also able to hear what the occupants of the vehicle were saying and doing?
Correct.
And can you describe for the jurors then what occurred during this period at the SUV?
So the second time we went out, the person in the passenger seat was doing most of the talking. We were telling him, just come inside, we just want to talk to George. And the person in the passenger seat was saying how, that's not me, like, I tried to use a fake bill and you put me on game, so I ripped it. And that'll happen in the video because he also tried to use a fake bill that I did not let him use, and then he ripped it and he put it on the ground there. So he was just explaining like what had happened.
And so just to be clear, you said the passenger seat, you're talking about the front passenger seat.
Correct.
And at that time, did you have any interaction with Mr. Floyd directly?
I do not recall.
All right. So let's run Exhibit 31 a little bit. Now I'm going to pause it here real quickly, please. And for the record, it's 20:22:34. We saw the individual in the white T-shirt sort of bend over and pick something up. Can you tell the jury what was happening there?
He was picking up the fake bill that the individual in the passenger seat tried to use.
Okay. And you referenced earlier one that was torn in half.
Correct.
Is that the bill that was torn in half?
Correct.
All right. And let's keep running 31 then, please. I'm going to ask to pause it right here, please. The timestamp reflects 20:23:35. It appears the two of you are now walking away from the SUV, correct?
Correct.
So during those preceding moments, it appears that the two of you are talking with at least some occupants of the vehicle.
Correct.
And did you have any conversations with Mr. Floyd, or was it just the front seat passengers?
Just the front seat passenger.
Were you able to see Mr. Floyd at all during that interaction?
Correct.
What did you see about him?
As I said earlier, he was just kind of shaking his head and putting his hands in the air, like kind of like, why is this happening to me? Like, I don't want this to happen, sort of thing.
And so he appeared to be awake?
Correct.
And so what was the end result of that conversation?
George Floyd did not choose to come into the store.
Neither did the passenger front.
Correct.
All right.